You are listening to Dove Valley Deep Divers with Erick Trickel
and Lance Sanderson.
Ball comes out of the hands of Newton. It's on the ground, picked up by T.J. Ward at the 4-yard line. Vaughn Miller did it again.
On Overtime Media.
And it looks like we are live. Mile high hello, everybody in Broncos country. Welcome into another episode of the Dove Valley Deep Divers podcast. We'll give Bawana Beast down behind the scenes. Wow, that's really loud. We'll give Bawana Beast a second here to get the Facebook group. It looks like we're good to go. Again, mile high hello, everybody in Broncos country. Welcome into the Dove Valley Deep Divers podcast. I'm your host, Lance Sanderson, and joining me as per usual is my good friend and colleague. He is your Denver Broncos insider and Mile High Huddle senior NFL draft analyst, the one and only Erick Trickel. Shut up, please, phone. What's up, Erick? How we doing, man?
I'm doing pretty good. I'm ready for this weekend or this week to be over. Very rough week. A lot of stuff going on. Excited that I got all my scouting reports sent in. My final player graded over 400 total players with individual grades. So excited to be done. Now I can just focus on relaxing a little bit before the craziness that is the actual NFL draft.
Yeah, there you go. You could probably help me out and keep me in line as well, and making sure that I get all my. I'm about halfway done. I'm about halfway done with the ones that we talked about to get at least to the 50 that we were wanting to for the baseline. So I've still got a little ways to go. I'll get probably 8 or 10 done this weekend as well, and then work on the rest of them. And I'm hoping to get 50 before the draft actually kicks off on the 29th. But no, it's been good up this way. Got our inspection done on the house last weekend. We're good to go as far as all that goes. We've got an electrical inspection done. They're going to have to replace an electrical panel, but that's not necessarily the biggest deal. Everything's going good, though. It's been really fun in this entire house buying process, and to be able to be a part of not only doing that and then do this as well. I've been pretty kind of busy here lately, but it is good to have this break away from reality for just a few minutes for a little while and talk some football with you guys. So I'm glad to be back, man. Guys, great show planned for you today. I'm getting away from the quarterback talk just to hear a little bit. We're going to be talking about some day 2 prospects that Erick and I really kind of like. Both of us actually have a list of 5, 6, 7 guys. We'll run through at least 3 of those and then throw it away to the super chat and have some draft mailbag. But guys, before we get started, got to give a shout out to our presenting sponsor, Manscaped. Guys, 2021 off on a really good start. The vaccination's working. Everything's kind of getting opened up here now. And get yourself out there, guys. Go out and make yourself known. Get yourself cleaned up. The easiest way to do that is with Manscaped. Their precision performance engineered tools. Really good stuff. The Lawnmower 3.0 is an amazing tool. I use it for a beard trimmer. The wife loves it. I look really good. Erick, what do you got for us today?
Well, as always, I got what they call the Shed. It's their travel bag. If you do any kind of travel, it's actually a great bag to hold all your toiletries. I'm going to be actually traveling here in end of May, so I'm going to be taking this as my toiletry bag. You got what they call their toner, and then you got some deodorant that you just can rub on there and help the smell about it. But the best thing is the Lawnmower 3.0 comes in its own little baggie that I couldn't get open. And it's very easy to use. It's very smooth. And probably the best thing that I like about it is that when you turn it on, it's got a little light, because the last thing you want to do is not be able to see down there properly and end up nicking yourself. So that light comes in really handy, especially depending on where you live. The lighting may not be the best, like here in Alaska. So really comes in handy. But my favorite thing, honestly, is actually their briefs. Super soft, super comfortable, just super free feeling and everything like that. Absolutely love it. They have a lot of great products as well. They've got a nail clipping kit, bunch of stuff that works very well and is nice to have.
Yeah, man, that nail clipping kit, I use it once a week. Just make sure that my fingernails are nice and trimmed up and not going to be scratching my lady friend, not be scratching the baby as well. I love the boxer briefs. They're just tremendously comfortable. They breathe very well. They don't ride up. They're my favorite pair of boxer briefs. I'm telling you what, guys, the easiest way to get this stuff is to go to manscaped.com. Use the promo code HUDDLE at checkout. You get 20% off and free shipping on anything at manscaped.com. Again, guys, promo code HUDDLE for 20% off and free shipping. Your boys, your wife, and everybody else are definitely going to thank you. Now, Erick, I'm going to let you kind of take off this list. Now, before we get into it, guys, I want to throw just kind of a qualifier into this. We always talk about the Broncos, and we're going to continue to talk about the Broncos here, but we also are. I mean, Erick is Mile High Huddle senior NFL draft analyst, so we are going to be talking about some guys that don't necessarily make sense for the Broncos here, and a couple of the guys, anyways, that I have that don't necessarily make sense for the Broncos with the scheme fit, but they are players that I do really like. Now, Eric, I'm going to let you kick us off here. Give us your the number one guy that you kind of want to talk about today.
Well, first I want to say hello to the chat. We got some pretty good comments coming in, and we got Albert coming in. Thank you, Albert, man. Hello to you as well. Thank you for referring to us as draft gurus. I don't consider myself to be a draft guru by any means, but hey, we appreciate it. Biggie says, I have no time to take a break. I got to get into next year's. No, that starts in June. So I do get a little bit of a break there. And then after the draft, of course, I'm breaking down what the Broncos' actual draft class. So get a nice little break in, but not much of one. Spicy Mike's in there saying if my 7-round mock comes to fruition, you'd be happy. Hey, I don't see how anybody could be unhappy if that ended up happening. And those who are, I think they're just BSing just to BS. Yeah. Ernie's in here, of course. Say hello, Ernie.
What up, Ernie?
Hello, Tim. Hello, Bob. Sheldon comes in. I'd rather have Nick Foles backing up Drew than any QB in the draft. Well, boo-boo hiss.
Yeah, I'm not going to agree with that. Absolutely
Dylan
not.
And Malcolm Brown, of course, coming in from Homer, Alaska. Always nice to see fellow Alaskans joining us. Very weird as well. But welcome, Malcolm. Hope you're having a good time. And Biggie, I know I left myself open for a good joke. It's kind of hard not to when talking about manscaping. So it's kind of hard not to open yourself up for it.
That Manscaped read is really fun because you can really kind of throw out some innuendos if you want to and not necessarily get yourself in any kind of trouble. So I try to every now and again, but also at the same time, gotta keep her PG for the show. But hello to everybody. And again, welcome into the Dove Valley Deep Divers podcast. Eric, what do you got, man?
So also I wanted to say is we're going to be doing a mailbag. So make sure you guys get your draft questions.
Yeah.
We'll come back to them and get them as we can. But, I mean, there's a lot of guys in the second round, and as always, the first round always gets all the attention, especially with all the rumors of Denver trading up, Denver trading down, just everything going on. Of course, number 9 is going to get all the attention. But there's a lot of talent day 2. That's where the thick of this class is. I actually have 42 guys who have second-round grades.
Wow.
Which is quite a bit. I mean, it's more than previous years. I think the most I've had before this was 35 or 36. I can't remember off the top of my head for sure, but it's definitely a lot this year. And one guy that I really like has really risen up for me anyways on my board, because at first I didn't know much about him, but his name is Milton Williams. He's a defensive lineman out of Louisiana Tech. I absolutely love his game. I love what he can bring to the table. I like him in the Broncos scheme. I don't think he's a natural early transition, but he can be made to work. And Denver doesn't need a guy who sees a lot of reps early on. That's what they have McTelvin Najim. That's what they brought in Shamar Stevens in. Draymond Jones should be starting. Shelby Harris is back. Mike Purcell, Deshaun Williams. They have those guys in town now that they don't need a guy to come in and play a big role right away. Milton Williams, I like what he has. You're able to sit there and use him on the back. Just a couple reps here and there while you work on develop him to make him more of a natural fit in your scheme. And he's got good versatility once you get that down to play multiple schemes, multiple techniques. And he's just super fun and exciting. Blows up offensive linemen all the time. Blows up plays in the backfield. Just super fun and exciting player that just didn't get much attention because, I mean, many people don't pay attention to Louisiana Tech.
Well, and to be quite honest, I'd never even heard the name until we started talking about it. And I was actually looking through the Draft Network's big board and was looking for some players to take a look at to maybe try to talk about. And Milton Williams was one that I didn't recognize, so I'll have to go back and check him out. What's his best scheme fit, and what's his best trait, do you think?
So I think his best trait is probably his explosion off the snap. He really explodes, and he converts that into good power. And he comes with an upward strike to get them onto their heels and drive them back. And his best scheme fit is probably a traditional 4-3 as a 3 technique.
Okay.
But with some development, he can fit as a 5 technique and be moved up and down the line.
Okay.
That's why I said it's not a natural scheme fit, but he can be made to work.
Yeah. Okay. That's really good stuff, man. I cannot wait to take a look at him. I'm probably gonna have to do that this weekend if I get the opportunity. I will just say hello to Jason O'Neill jumping in here on YouTube. Good evening, guys. Can we speak about what the identity could be and anything else other than lock, please and thanks? And you joined the right show because we're tired of talking about the quarterbacks. So we're gonna be talking about some draft prospects here as well. Albert's got a great question. Which linebacker would you get for the Broncos? We'll get back to that one because I want to jump in here really fast and talk about a guy that has explosive speed to power. Really good length, strength, fluidity. I like this guy a lot. He didn't test very well. And Eric, we were talking about him in our group chat earlier today with Carl Dumler and Jordan Smith, the edge rusher out of UAB. I got to sit down and do a scouting report on him the other day. Watched 4 or 5 different games. The game against Rice that he had was absolutely spectacular, especially in the fourth quarter where you could see that bend. He's 6'6", 245, 255. He actually went into his pro day and gained 35 pounds and was closer to 270, which didn't help him. He tested actually a little bit slower than he should have. But that first step explosion coming around the edge, the bend that he has, the natural pass rush moves that he has, and the flexibility in his hips and his ankles makes him a very intriguing prospect to me. Now, there's a big issue with him is he doesn't stack very well in the running game, and he can get bowled over and blown out of the way. And also a lot of times you'll see him get a little bit too far upfield, especially in the read option game, and they'll open up big running lanes behind him. So he's really got to work on that awareness and be able to build some strength. And that might have been a big part of him going into his pro day a little bit heavier to maybe show that he can play with a little bit more power on the edge. But if he drops back down to that 245 range and has that and still maintains that first step explosion, he has enough athleticism dropping backwards into zone that he could be a really intriguing player to develop behind Von Miller and learn in that Von Miller role and take over for him for next year with an incredibly high pass rush upside. He had 12 and a half career sacks over 3 seasons, which doesn't seem like a lot of production, but his pressure rate was incredibly high. I really like this guy.
So I got a question for you with him, and this is one thing that sticks out to me. I'm not super big on production exactly,
right,
but production matters with who it comes against.
Mm-hmm.
One big-time school that has a really good offensive lineman, Jordan Smith has 1 sack. All of his sacks came against inferior competition.
Right. Yep. Mm-hmm.
How big of a concern is that for you when transitioning to the NFL, where he's going to be facing better lines in that best school?
I think the biggest thing to me is that, and I agree with you. The transition to that bigger level. With smaller schools and that inferior competition, the thing that you really want to see is the fact that he was still dominating at least the guys at his competition level. So there's always going to be a jump from smaller school guys, the guys like a Jordan Smith. What was that interior defensive lineman that everyone really liked a few years ago that the Broncos picked up? I can't remember his name. There was a couple of other small school guys that really came in, and you're like, yeah, how's he going to transition to that next level? Well, look at how he's dominating at the level that he is currently at. Let him build up some strength, let him build up some technique, and let's see how that actually translates to that next level. Eric, I'm going to mute myself and go ahead and take this away for just a second so I can get my phone figured out. Sorry about that.
I'm going to sit here and just take a couple of things from the chat real quick. Joe asks, what do you guys think about Jameen Davis? Sorry, John. I really like him. I think he's going to end up cracking the first round. Go ahead and pull up Kent's comment, John. This is actually an interesting one, and I'm going to use this to transition into my next guy. And hold up.
Kent Freeman, the one on Samuel Cosmi. There we go.
What's y'all's thoughts on picking Samuel Cosmi in the second or trading up the late first, if not him, Leatherwood? I'm not a big fan of Samuel Cosmi. I'm really low on him. I don't see all the hype involved in him. To me, he reminds me so much of Ty Sambrailo, who I couldn't stand as a prospect, and I got rather angry when Denver picked him up. But Alex Leatherwood actually is kind of fitting that you bring him up, because my next player to watch in day 2 is Alex Leatherwood. This is a guy who, if this wasn't such a strong offensive tackle class, people would be talking about him as a top 15 pick. Because here's a guy who he's played multiple spots on your offensive line. He's got that versatility. He's had good years at both positions. And then he tested out extremely well athletically. Like, this is a guy that he just has a little bit of everything for it. And I really like Alex Leatherwood. I like the versatility. I like the fact that you can start him at left tackle, move him over to right tackle, move him inside the guard, depending on where he succeeds the most. And then you can find that, and you can just place him there and leave that fit there. That's what I like about Alex Leatherwood. I've liked him for a while. He was a first-round prospect for me entering the season. And this year there were some moments where it just kind of a little bit rough, some issues that popped up that made me a little bit concerned. And so it dropped him a little bit. He's now a second-round player for me. But I still like him. I would definitely consider him at 40, depending on how the first round falls. I like him. He's a guy I'd be looking at. I'd be looking at him even well before Samuel Cosmi.
Right, and that actually kind of ties into this question here from Richie. And I apologize, guys. New phone, who dis? I'm trying to figure that thing out right now, so I apologize for the interruption there. But Richie coming in here talking about always loves to catch the two of us, the offensive tackles. Who do you like, and how do they compare to the round one guys? And that's a great comparison there, Eric. A guy that I really like that you're going to be able to see on day two, probably a third round pick, Spencer Brown out of northern Iowa. I really like the length, the strength, athleticism, the versatility with him. He can play probably either side. He's going to have to grow a little bit. There's some technique refinement that you need to have. But honestly, if he has probably a little bit more upside to him than Samuel Cosmi does. Cosmi is a much more refined pass protector right now, but at least Spencer Brown is willing to get out there and get nasty in the running game. Samuel Cosmi is not a really good run blocker. And I think that I'm not necessarily sure if it's a play strength issue, because Spencer Brown is a mauler. That guy is just huge. Samuel Cosmi, he's a dancing bear. He wants to be that flashy pass protector. He doesn't want to get out there and go just knock the snot out of somebody out on the boundary. He's not interested in doing that kind of thing. So to me, Spencer Brown has a better Rich, I hope that answers your question just a little bit there about how they compare to a round one guy, because I do think Samuel Cosmi is going to be a round one guy, and watch out for Indianapolis. I've heard some interesting things about Indianapolis and Samuel Cosmi. And with Samuel Cosmi, I want to talk about this. Is my big issue with him is the functional strength. He just doesn't have it. He struggles to generate power. Yep. And when I watch offensive linemen, one big thing I look for is their ability to roll power through their hips, or starting with their base, obviously, starts with strong base, and then you roll it up through your knees, through your base, and up and out your arms, and generate push that way. And he just doesn't do it. That's something I see with Spencer Brown. I can see him generate that push, rolling that power through him. It's one of the few things that I really liked about Garrett Bowles when he was coming out. One of the things I've liked about multiple other guys. But obviously it's not all I look for. But with Samuel Cosmi, it's like he as you said, he wants to be this dancing bear, this flashy pass protector, but he doesn't get enough depth on his kick slide. And when he does, he just opens himself for an inside move. So he wants to be this flashy pass protector, but he's not keeping balance. He's not keeping a good base. He's not keeping good positioning. Another term that you'll hear a lot as well is, so your quarterback's a star, obviously, and your tackle's butts should be the camera, and it never comes off the quarterback, never comes off the star. And Samuel Cosmi, all the time, I'll see his butt come off the quarterback and just leave that open lane to him, and it drives me nuts. He's able to get by doing this in the college level because he's pretty athletically gifted, but moving into the NFL, it's going to be far more problematic. And I want to grab this comment before we grab the super chat real quick from Facebook user. Because of your settings, we can't tell who you are, but we appreciate you jumping in. Yeah, man. It says, I know you don't like Micah Parsons because of the off-field issues, but if he didn't have those, would you think he'd be a good fit for the Broncos? I said this before, and I'll reiterate this, is Micah Parsons, without the off-field stuff, still isn't a top 10 player to me. He's got so many problems in coverage, and I don't know how exactly to fix them. It's not an experience issue. It's just he doesn't seem comfortable. When I watch him, he seems hesitant in coverage. He doesn't seem like he wants to get enough depth. He wants to be moving forward. He wants to be attacking. It's why he does well against the run. So don't like him as a top 10 pick, even without the off-field stuff. The off-field stuff has him sitting as a second-round prospect to me. Now, again, without that, if Denver were to trade down without the off-field stuff, somewhere from 15 to 25, I would be okay with it. But what you would be doing is you'd be drafting him to replace Alexander Johnson in that case. Yeah. Not Josie Jewell, not the more coverage role. You're drafting him to be that run defending linebacker that handles a very short, shallow, specific zone coverage in your defense. And that's it. And you hope you can develop him, but I just don't know. Well, and that's a big thing with him. And Tim Durr jumping in here on Facebook, I will to grab this. What about Parsons as a pass rusher? And that's his natural position. He was an edge defender when he came into college, and they transitioned into off ball, which is why you see that. I think the lack of comfortability in his drops as a coverage guy. So it's one of those things with him that, yeah, the high end athleticism, it does kind of project just a little bit to being a high end coverage player, but at the same time, that's just not his game. He is, and as Eric said, he wants to move forward. He would be a really good Devin White style of coverage defender where he's moving forward into the flats. But if you drop him into hook zone, you drop him into that intermediate zone out on the boundary, he's not going to be able to get there. He doesn't seem fluid enough as an athlete, in my opinion. I don't think the hips are actually fluid enough for him to be able to do that. but also he just doesn't seem comfortable enough and understand his landmarks. He's still got to learn that. So it's a projection there. And to me, I'm not willing to take that much of a projection. There's one that we're going to get to here in just a minute after we grab these super chats, because
real quick,
I do got an answer. There was a question about Cameron Magron. I want to talk about him here in just a minute.
And with Micah Parsons talking about his issues in coverage, the game that really highlighted them was the 2019 game against the Minnesota Golden Gophers. That game shows his issues in coverage in spades.
Yep. Yeah, no, absolutely. You're absolutely correct. Let's see here. Let's see if I can find the first one. Malcolm Brown, with always coming in with the greatest questions on a super chat here. Thank you, Malcolm. Again, do you guys grade with a numerical system, alphabetical, narrative, or something else? How do you keep track of analysis on hundreds of prospects? There's a great book. Before we get into this on your personal thing, there's a great book that Erick has actually told us a whole bunch about on the grading scale for NFL teams, and it's nothing compared to what I do. That's crazy, way more in depth. There's letters, numbers, a dot. There's a symbol that guys get based on if it's I think it was a Falcons player. They gave him a Falcon symbol because he fits the team on the field, off the field, and shows what is it, high character or something like, I can't remember the 3 criteria. Anyways, for me, I have just a generic number grade and then rank them based on the number grade and then do a scheme fit if I want to. There's some injury concerns that might raise or lower a guy, but give them a number grade and then line them up like that and make a vertical board that way. That's typically the way that I do it because it's the easiest way for me to keep track of it because I can throw it into a Google sheet and it's easy.
Yeah, so my system is numerical based. It's if you ever read my grades during the season, my player grades, it's a very similar grading system to that. It's adapted, obviously, to be fit to span over multiple games instead of just a one game thing. So it's my own grading system, grading skill that I made up that I kind of adapted from my time when I was with Pro Football Focus, and that's how I do that. And I keep track of it with notebooks. I'm old fashioned. I do a lot of my notebooks. I write it down. It feels more real to me, I guess, that way. And then I put it into Google Docs, Google Sheets, stuff like that. And the NFL, this book that I was reading about it, NFL has a very awesome. They have a numerical grade for on the field. They have a letter grade for off the field. And then they have a red dot or a different color dots, depending on if they're a scheme fit or not. And then they have some teams, not all, will have their logo, which determines if they fit the mold, the culture that you're wanting to build. So if a guy has super off-field issues and you don't want to take that, you don't feel you have the culture for that, he won't get that. But if a guy who is a leader doing stuff on and off the field, he would get that. So it's a very interesting book. I can't remember what the name of it is off the top of my head.
It's called The Draft. I don't remember who actually wrote it, but it's called The Draft.
Yeah, it's The Draft. It's called The Draft. That's right. Very interesting book. Follows the 2005 draft, I think is what it is, and events leading up to that and following a couple players, and you get a lot of good information from it. But yeah, mine's just numerical based is all it is, using notebooks and Google Sheets.
Yeah, the Google Sheet, my Google Sheet right now is actually pretty big. I still have a lot more to go. I'm only about 150 players as compared to Erick's like 7,000. So Andy Callick jumping in here with the $10 super. What do you guys think will be the biggest difference between Elway and Peyton's approach to the draft? Excited to see how it all unfolds. # Denver Broncos for life. This is actually kind of an interesting one because George Payton made it very clear that he wants to be a draft and develop kind of a guy, but I'm not necessarily sure that that's what we're going to see this year. I could definitely see the Broncos trading back, going and getting a lot more draft picks. I'm hoping, this is my personal hope, I personally hope that he's going to go and get a quarterback. And I've made it clear over on my Twitter account, I made it clear last week, Justin Fields is my guy. That's my quarterback one this year, and I want them to go and get Justin Fields. That's what I would like to see happen. Now, is he going to do that, especially in his first year as a GM? Probably not. But I think that's going to be the big thing, is it's going to be the accumulation of draft capital, getting more players in, taking more shots at the dartboard. Exactly, like the more darts you have, the more liable you are to throw a bullseye. So I think that's probably going to be the biggest difference. John Elway really went with high athletic upside kind of guys there for a while, and then he switched it to like more team captain and leadership stuff. I think George Payton is really just, let's get as many darts as we can and get as many quality players, get a bunch of information on everybody as much as we can, and bring in as many players as we can, and we're gonna field a competitive team.
So the biggest difference between their approach, I think, is that I don't think that Payton is going to basically say, all right, coach, who do you want in the later rounds? So first round under Elway was a collective. Everybody votes, majority wins. don't think that'll be the approach here. I think everybody will be able to voice their opinion, but I think it's ultimately going to come down to George Payton, Vic Fangio, and maybe the college scouting director. I can't remember his name. Stark?
Yeah, Brian Stark, yep.
Yeah, I think it's going to come down to them. They'll have the final say, and they'll carry the majority of the weight. And after that, Elway would be like, all right, coach, we're targeting this position. Which of these players? Things like that. And I don't think Payton will do that either. I think it'll be he'll be a lot more hands-on. I mean, not saying he's going to ignore the coaching staff or ignore the scouting department, but I think he's going to be a lot more hands-on, making the picks, trusting his background as a scout, and getting guys that he likes that fits with what the coaches want to do. So I think that he's going to be a lot more hands-on than Elway was.
No.
And I don't think that he will sit there and panic to try to move up for players that they like. I do think that they are looking at moving up. I've heard enough stuff about that. I've had it confirmed multiple times that they're going to be looking to move up, probably either for Justin Fields or Trey Lance. We'll see what ends up happening. Not saying it will, just saying that they're interested. So it's definitely going to be interesting to see what they do. But yeah, that's my biggest difference between the two.
Yeah, and I agree with you on that one because George Payton he came up, he cut his teeth as a scout. Like that's what he did he was at the rule of 25, what is it, 325s, 25 years old for $25,000 a year for 25 hours a day. Like that is what a scout's job is. That's how he came into the NFL, and him and Rick Spielman kind of grew up together and doing that. So I agree with you on that. He's going to rely on his scouting background, and he's in there every single morning at 4:00 in the morning, staying until 9, 10 o'clock at night, grinding tape and making sure that he understands every single one of these players. He's going to find his guys. He's going to be able to go and put a good valuation on them and evaluation and figure out where we're actually going to be able to go. Now, let's get back to this really fast because our Powell, I found the question that I was actually looking for. This is another guy that I really wanted to talk about. Is the linebacker from Michigan sliding down the draft board? I think his name is Magron. His name is Cameron Magron, and he's a guy that I got to do a scouting report a couple weeks ago on that I really like a lot. I like his fill ability in the running game. He does a really good job attacking in the flats and the coverage. He's a bit more turn and run kind of a coverage defender than he is a true drop back defender, but I think that he has the requisite hip flexibility, and his back pedal is actually good enough. You can coach him up just a little bit. Now, the reason why he might seem to be sliding down draft boards, and this is a big thing, against, I think it was Rutgers towards the end of the season in November, he had a torn ACL, and that's a big injury concern. So with him, I think that he has the talent to be probably a tail end of round 2 on the board. More than likely, he would have been a 3rd round pick. But with that torn ACL and the medical questions that are coming out of this, and you can't get the guy in front of you, you can't go and have these private workouts and everything like that. That to me is going to drop him down to like the 4th or 5th round. Similar to like what happened with Jake Butt, but Jake Butt was also a potentially a 1st round talent. Like he was the best tight end in the class. Cameron Magron could see his draft stock fall dramatically, and it's unfortunate because this is a player that I really like.
So I really like him and Magron. I have issues with his drop depths and coverage.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I think the more depth he gets, the worse he is. I view him not exactly the same, but similarly to Devin Bush in those regards. I think it's more width instead of depth for them. So how concerned are you with how poorly he did in coverage? He allowed 17 of 27 catches or targets to be caught and 4 touchdowns for a 128.4 NFL passer rating during his 2 years at Michigan.
It's concerning to me, but again, that's one of those production issues there, and I think that really he was kind of a lone man on that defense as well, especially on the inside. And I think I'm willing to forgo a little bit of his coverage deficiencies because there is some athletic upside to him, and you just really kind of need to coach him up and get him more comfortable in those depth drops. But still, his ability. This is. Quite honestly, it's almost like a Micah Parsons light. Like, honestly, there's athletic potential there, and he is a lot better attacking to the gaps and filling in the running game than he is moving backwards. But I think there's some potential there with this kid that I would be more willing to go with the injury concern than the character concerns with a Cameron Magron.
I understand that, and I just want to grab this because Big E says, see, that's kind of odd, Eric, because the Broncos beat says they're not looking to move up. Depends on what Broncos beat you talk to.
Yep.
That's what it is. One of them is seemingly being used by Denver to keep the hype up and morale there with Drew Lock. And others they're talking about it, and they consistently say that Denver's looking to move up. Woody Pages, Mike Klizzes, a couple others. So I guess I'm not sure like who you mean by Broncos beat, but it just depends on who you listen to, on who it is. And I've had multiple conversations, and yeah, it's definitely looking at moving up. Not saying they will, but they're definitely looking at it.
Yeah, I think that's honestly the best case scenario. And this is something I'm going to work on after the draft, after I'm done doing all these scouting reports and everything like that. I want you guys to do this. And I asked this to Eric and to actually put it on my Twitter account as well, at Sanderson MHH, by the way. Go check that out. Take the Broncos roster and set it on a piece of paper, and then take the Chiefs roster and set it on a piece of paper. Remove the quarterback situation and compare it side by side, because the quarterback is the most important position in sports. If you side by side compare those two rosters as they stand without having Drew Lock and Patrick Mahomes in the fold, you're going to be very surprised to see what you find. Let me just say it like that. This Broncos roster is not nearly as bad as everyone wants to make it out to be. And quite honestly, if you put Patrick Mahomes on this Broncos team, they're a Super Bowl contender. If you put Drew Lock on that Chiefs roster, they're a 5-11 team. Like, honestly, it's the same kind of – there's a lot of high-end talent at multiple different positions on both of those teams. And there are some holes to work through, and there are some things that you really want to like. And, I mean, it's a very blanket statement here. I mean, to do some more analysis, but looking at it at a face level, because I see Eric looking at me all crazy here. No. Like, there's a lot to like about this Broncos roster. And adding an elite quarterback – it may not happen this year, because you obviously to add in a rookie into this team, you're going to have those rookie struggles and whatnot. I'm just not going to immediately make them a contender, but it gives them a lot more upside. I will say that.
So I was going to say is, outside of quarterback, the Broncos have the best roster in the AFC West.
I don't disagree with you. I really don't.
So, and since this seems to be a confusion here, not saying they're likely to move up. I am saying it is being discussed.
There we go.
Woody Page may be saying it's more likely they add a vet. That is very well possible. All I am saying is that they are looking at moving up. That's it.
That's confirmed through multiple different reporters actually that have said that they have had conversations. There have been phone calls made. So they are interested.
It's been well reported.
Yes, it has been. It definitely has been. Eric, let's get back to our scouting reports list, because I don't want to talk about the quarterbacks anymore, man. I'm done and over with this conversation. So for me, I just had Cameron Magron. You're up next. Who's your third guy that you want to talk about today?
So I've talked about him on here quite a bit before, so I'm going to nail out to Aleem McNeil. I mean, it was kind of the same thing with Milton Williams, but with Aleem McNeil, he's more of that 0-1 technique. And Mike Purcell, as much as I love him, we're just not sure what he's going to be after the injury,
right?
And coming back, and he's getting older, so we're not sure how long he has left. Aleem McNeil, he can be a depth piece for it, and just be developed and everything with a limited role. Another guy is a guy named Robert Haines. Now, I really like a lot of these Notre Dame offensive linemen this year. Robert Haines, he's a guy who he may not look like he can play offensive tackle. He's a little bit smaller. He's only like 6'4". Doesn't have ideal length, but he's got enough. There's enough length. He's over that 33-arm threshold, and I like what he can do at tackle. He's a guy that I can see move inside, outside. I like his ability. I like his scheme fit. He plays with plenty of power. He's able to roll that power up through his lower half into his upper half and generate push. There's a lot there to like about him. And if Denver is looking in that third round of trying to get an offensive lineman, and Spencer Brown's gone, who would be my top guy in that round for them, I wouldn't mind taking a shot on Robert Haines.
Oh, there you go. I mean, I haven't really got a chance to check him out. Now, I want to knock out just a couple of wide receivers here, because quite honestly, this Broncos team, it sounds really wild, but Tim Patrick could potentially be on the move. Jerry Jeudy is up and coming, had some rookie struggles and whatnot. Obviously, KJ Hamler as well with the drops. I mean, they've led the league in 1 and 2 in drop percentage. We don't know what Courtland Sutton's going to be. There are a couple of very intriguing wide receiver prospects that add a different dynamic, and one that I talked about, I had a scouting report on him drop the other day. Tylen Wallace, wide receiver out of Oklahoma State. This guy is your prototypical Z receiver, stretch the field, explosive athlete. He didn't test as fast as I thought he was going to. He was in the 4.5s. I thought he was going to be low 4.3s, high 4.4s. So that's a little concerning to me. But at the same time, the long speed that he has and that jump ball ability, even that slight frame that he has, 5'11", 195, 200, something like that. He's not necessarily the biggest guy, but he's got the catch radius of a trampoline. Like, this guy goes and gets the football. He has a my ball mentality that I absolutely love. And as a true replacement for Tim Patrick, let's just say for an example, where you can have him as that deep threat. He's got to work on his route running a little bit. That Oklahoma State route tree is not necessarily the most taxing on NFL prospects, but Tylen Wallace, man, I really like this kid. Another guy I really like out of North Carolina is Diami Brown. Quick, shifty, kind of a smaller guy as well. I think he's only probably 6'1", 205, something like that. I've seen comparisons to him to Stephon Diggs, which I don't necessarily like, but also at the same time, I can kind of see it. He works really well over the middle of the field. Again, another guy that can stretch the field a little bit and go and get the ball. I really like him more, but also at the same time, I think that there's some development that you need to work with him. He's not the best route runner. He rounds off all of his routes. He's not really crisp in his movements. And he's not really the short area quickness that you would want to see from a guy that can play a little bit in the slot and a little bit into the boundary. He's a Z receiver, but I want some more quick twitch explosiveness out of my guys at that particular position. So give me Tylen Wallace first, but Diami Brown is a very intriguing prospect to me.
I'm not overly sold on Tylen Wallace myself.
Oh, come on, man.
But,
love him. I love that guy.
But Diami Brown, I'm not too far off on. So, yeah, and I mean, I could see the need for a receiver. I think this is a good class for receivers. So I think there could be some guys, and we'll talk about them next week on day 3, that could really be a big impact for them. Mm-hmm. Or not necessarily a big impact, but be a good get for them. So that's just kind of what I'm looking at here. And last thing I'm going to say on it is Biggie. I understand Benjamin Albright saying that they're not looking to move up. Like, he can say that. It's being plenty reported elsewhere, and I know for a fact that they are. Like, it's been reported, well reported. I don't know how many times I have to say that. But moving on, I think that one position that they really desperately need to add is at safety. I mean, Kareem Jackson, he's a free agent after this year. They let Will Parks go. He's still a free agent. Like, they don't have any depth there. They don't have a future next to Justin Simmons. They need help. And there's 2 safeties in this class, day 2, that I really like for Denver. Jamar Johnson. We talked about him a little bit last week.
Yeah, we did.
He had a really good game against Ohio State, had a couple other really good games, has good range, can work as a 2-high safety, can even work as a single high depending on if it's needed. The play against the run can be hit or miss. Definitely need to clean up his tackling technique a little bit, but he doesn't miss a large number of tackles. And then Javon Holland, who is just this versatile piece that can do anything and everything you want in your secondary. He can drop down and play in the box. He's not a guy who seeks to be physical. He's not a guy that's going to sit there and go and just like lay out a guy just because he has the opportunity. He's very calculated with how physical he is. He is a guy who he's going to go and just be as physical as is needed and not go overboard with it, which is a good thing because Kareem Jackson has a couple times knocked out his own teammates, which is one problem I have with Kareem Jackson. But that's not going to be something that you have to worry about with Javon Holland, which is why I like him.
Yeah. George coming in here, continuing to speak about the safeties here. Andre Cisco is a guy I like out of Syracuse. Very versatile, better as a split field safety where he can come vertically. I like him as a tackler as well. I think he can play in that single high safety role, but also at the same time, his best fit is in that middle of the field open. So that'd be split safeties, 2 safeties deep. And then Divine Diablo, I might try to look at him again. Again, another split safety role. I don't like him as a tackler. I think I like the physicality, but he just doesn't bring his arms. He's a hitter, and he's not like, honestly, he is a kind of like a Kareem Jackson, where he doesn't like to wrap up. He likes to lay the wood, lay his shoulder. Divine Diablo.
Oh yeah.
I'm not a huge fan of him. A day 3 pick, like a 5th or 6th round pick, maybe I could see that. But at the same time, there's a lot that you got to work with him. He's super stiff too. I don't like that.
He's TJ. He's like a different size TJ Ward, really.
Yeah. Uh-huh. Oh, yep. Mm-hmm. Yep. No, absolutely. I totally agree with that. Yeah, you're absolutely right there.
Now, James Wiggins, I like seeing that comment. Yep. So Cincinnati, they have a lot of good defenders, and I'm excited for their defense class next year too with Majai Sanders. But James Wiggins, oh man, he got my juices flowing when I watched Cincinnati's defense this year. Love him and Derek Forrest, they're 2 safeties that I would be looking at day 3 or round 3, round 4. I think that Derek Forrest might fall a bit, and I could see James Wiggins fall because he's got a pretty extensive injury history. I really like them both. Way to get my juices flowing.
I was going to say Derek Forrest is probably better than James Wiggins too. Like, honestly, I like James Wiggins. Like, but a big part of that is the injury concerns with James Wiggins, and I think that's what's going to get him drafted higher. Is Forrest has good health with him. Wiggins has a shoulder and I think a knee injury as well.
Something like that, yeah. So I also view it as a instance of higher ceiling compared to safe. I think James Wiggins a little bit higher ceiling. I think Derek Forrest is a little bit safe, especially without the injury issues. Because to me, with Derek Forrest, you're getting at least a solid number 3 safety and a special teams player. That is his floor. Like a solid number 3 safety and special teams. With James Wiggins, he has a chance to be out of the NFL in a few years because of the injuries. So that's one reason why I like Derek Forrest more. He's not higher on my board, but I like him a little bit more though.
Tyree Gillespie here. What about Tyree Gillespie?
Nah.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm not a big fan of him. I see somebody else say about Gillespie and Hamlin, and I love Demar Hamlin. I've loved Demar Hamlin for over a year. I sent him a Valentine's card, and he didn't respond back to me, which kind of hurt my feelings. But no, I absolutely love him. You guys will find out tomorrow. Those of you who tune into the Trickel Zone. But we're going to be talking about safeties and tight ends because we got to talk about tight ends. But Demar Hamlin, he's in my top 10 safeties.
There was
probably the only person who's he's in the top 10 safeties for. But I love him. I love what he can bring to your defense. Big fan.
All right, Todd jumping in here on YouTube. Eric, what are the 2 positions in this draft that seem to have the best depth through the first 4 rounds? This is a good question. It really is a good question. I want to take one here because I think I'm going to take one because I am fully like head over heels in love with this safety class, and it just ties into our conversation here. There are 5, 6, 7, 8 guys that could potentially be drafted in the top 115, top 130-ish in that area. I mean, you've got let's see, just to rattle them off: Richie Grant, my guy, Trevon Moehrig. You've got Javon Holland, Andre Cisco, Ardarius Washington, James Wiggins might be in that category. That's 6 right there. You've got Caden Stearns is another guy that might be able to crack that area. What's the I can't remember. So that's 7 guys at least that could be in the top 130.
So I'm looking at it, and I'm looking at my board because everything always goes to my board. And let's see here. Looks like edge and corner are probably the 2 deepest. Both of them have 15 players in my top 100 or in my top 3 rounds. So it'll probably be edge and corner as the 2 deepest ones for me.
That's fair. That's I didn't think about that. I'm just so like I said, I'm head over heels in love with the safety class. There are so many really talented guys.
It's a strong class, especially compared to what we've had for the last few years. Yep. Safety has just been for a while. Same with off-ball linebacker. And it's interesting to me because I think that people are kind of sleeping on these 2 classes a little bit because of how we've seen with linebackers and safeties for years. Like 4 or 5 years of terrible classes. Some talent, sure, but just overall not so good. And here we have these really talented classes, and people are just like, meh, whatever. It's like, open your eyes, man. These are strong classes.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. This cornerback class, there's what? The crazy thing about this defensive class, and we've said it a couple times here, is that it's not necessarily the greatest, like with the top end talents, but from about 25 to 75, maybe even 25 to about 100, that's where the meat of this defensive class is. You're going to be finding a lot of high quality players there. The offensive players, the quarterbacks are obviously going to push a bunch of these guys down, but I mean, in most other classes, I don't think Patrick Surtain's cornerback 1, which everybody has him as cornerback 1 on. Like even Caleb Farley with the injury concerns, when he might not even be cornerback 1 against a Jeffrey Okudah or a Denzel Ward. Like those guys were better than him, quite honestly. I'm not necessarily Greedy Williams, but let's just throw out another name there. Like they might be pushed down because of those other prospects. They're fine players, don't get me wrong, but they're elevated this year because this defensive class is not that strong. Everything is but it's super incredibly deep. Cornerback, edge, safety. The defensive linemen don't think about that. That class is terrible. This interior defensive line class is awful.
There's good talent though. So there's good talent. There's good talent at defensive line. You just have to find them, and that's like that. That's the case with any kind of. That's kind of the case with every position that's a bad class. There's always talent to be found.
Right, yeah.
I saw somebody ask earlier about later defensive linemen, and Bobby Brown out of Texas A&M is a guy I really like a lot. Taquan Graham out of Texas, Kyrus Tonga out of BYU.
There you go.
I really like Jordan Scott out of Oregon.
Mm-hmm.
I still like Jalen Twyman. I think that he can be a pretty good interior pass rusher. Deo Odeyingbo, he's another one I like. Cam Sample, depending on where you want to use him, he's probably more of an edge for most people. But like, there's a lot of guys that I like in this defensive line class. It's just not a single one really is deserving of a first round pick. And for a lot of people, that's where talented classes come from. How many guys can you talk about as a first round pick? There's just not, maybe one with defensive linemen, and that's Christian Barmore out of Alabama, but like that's about it.
Yeah, you took the words right out of my mouth on that one. Is Barmore is the guy, maybe Levi Onwuzurike, the interior defensive lineman from Washington, but he's super scheme limited and position limited. Like, I went back and really watched him. There's not a lot there with him as far as the versatility. He's explosive. He got the good length and whatnot, but I don't see him being able to move around. And he's like a single gap 3 technique in a 4-3 defense, and that's it. He's not
Which one?
Levi Onwuzurike.
Oh yeah.
He's a single gap 3 technique in a 4-3 defense. He's not going to 2 gap as a nose tackle. He's not going to be able to play the 1, and he's not. I don't think he's got the quick twitch enough to play the 5.
Nor the length. Doesn't have the length either.
I didn't think that I saw the length as that big of an issue, and maybe I'm looking at it the wrong way there. But at the same time, obviously, this is you. So, all right, Jason O'Neill. This was one I was going to go back for, and thank you, John. I appreciate you for this. Okay, Eric and Lance, let's get real for a minute. Which player are you pounding the table for? And I'm not going to say as far as just for the Broncos. Just any specific player that you are pounding the table for, as that is my guy, Justin Fields.
I mean, it's got to be quarterback. To me, if we're looking at non-quarterback, probably Elijah Molden or Elijah Moore. One of the Elijahs, those are 2 guys that I would, if I was in the NFL, as I was an NFL scout, I would go up to people and say, these guys are going to be successful. If not, fire me. Like, they can just work in the NFL in multiple different ways. Justin Fields is a guy that I would bet on as well. I wouldn't make that same bet, obviously, because he's a quarterback, but I would pound the table for Justin Fields. I think these issues of his character, his work ethic, all that stuff like that. Well, I've heard it while I was talking about him to you guys, to you, Nick and Carl in our group chat before Dan Orlovsky came out with it and started speaking about it, is I don't see them as a big concern. This is a guy who he went and pounded the table to play football this year. If he didn't love football, he wouldn't be doing that. So I'd be pounding the table. I don't think he's as inaccurate. I don't think he's stuck on his first reads as often as people say. I just really like it. Really like him, like what he brings. I mean, Trevor Lawrence is another one, but I was not going to pick Trevor Lawrence.
Yeah. So obviously you guys know my take on Justin Fields, and yes, that is a guy that I'm pounding the table for. I think he's QB1, and I've got a very interesting hypothetical question for you here, Eric, and I want you. I threw this up in the group chat earlier. So let's say that we flip the script just a little bit here. This is an if and then. If we flip the script on Trevor Lawrence and Justin Fields, and Trevor Lawrence was playing at Ohio State and Justin Fields was playing in Clemson, what would the conversation look like? Because this is a big key to this. The Ohio State offense is not very quarterback friendly. It's very, very driven on vertical breaking routes. It's very driven on guys holding the football for very long. And they don't necessarily use the RPOs and the read option game. They don't take advantage of the athleticism of the quarterback by any stretch of the imagination. You have to kind of be more creative. Not to say that Trevor Lawrence is a bad athlete by any stretch of the imagination, but he did have it a little bit easier in Dabo Swinney's offense, where he had some RPOs, where he had some read option stuff, where they did get him out on the boundary and picking some guys off. Does the conversation shift for you just a little bit if Justin Fields is not playing in Ohio State, or even if you don't want to put him at Clemson, maybe put him in like a Oklahoma, for example?
Yes. So one big thing with Justin Fields that we see a lot is that he gets stuck on his first reads. He doesn't come off his first reads. Ohio State, every single route on every single play is options. So they take longer to develop naturally. So yeah, I mean, you're seeing these things with Justin Fields. Well, watching Trevor Lawrence, he got stuck on his first reads far more often, in my opinion. He was later to get off his reads far more often, and they're not running option routes on every single route. They have one, and that's typically your hot guy. Depending on one read from the receiver, they run whatever it is determined by the safety.
I want to interject really fast. Trevor Lawrence really got stuck on split field safety combinations, which is what the vogue defense is in the NFL right now. You could run him in a cover 3 or man, then he actually was pretty good because he could identify that. Split field cover 2, cover 4 defenses, he really struggled diagnosing.
Yeah, definitely. And I definitely think it would. If you put him in to Oklahoma, if you put him in Alabama, I think that it's a clear cut. Justin Fields is the number one guy. And then there's everybody else. To me right now, there's Trevor Lawrence and here's Justin Fields.
Mm-hmm.
You take Justin Fields, put in a different offense. It's like this with Justin Fields up here.
Yeah.
So yeah, I definitely think it is. I saw somebody ask about him handling himself under pressure. It's concerning, but there's a lot of good moments to sit there and believe that he can do a lot better and be more consistent.
Yeah, and I definitely agree with you on that one. The one thing, and this is something that you if you pay attention to Benjamin Albright, you pay attention to Tim Jenkins, and you watch those guys, do a great job. Don't get me wrong. The cap pressure, so cornerback blitz from the field side. We were actually talking with this about this with Luke Polglaze last week before the show with Luke, and he didn't think that it was necessarily that big of a problem because at the college level, they'll rotate that and you'll just kind of rely on your offensive line and the athletes not being able to get home. So I think that against Indiana, where we saw those cat rotation pressures and Justin Fields struggled. He misdiagnosed it a couple times, but I don't know if it was necessarily a misdiagnosis or if it was just a product of him being so used to his offensive line being able to cover for those deficiencies. I don't think that he necessarily misdiagnosed it. It's that he just really felt comfortable with somebody else taking care of the assignment. There are also multiple times, especially, it's Rutgers, don't get me wrong, it's Rutgers, where he diagnosed that cap pressure and the rotation and threw underneath the corner blitz. And it's called slot reassignment. So if a cornerback comes, the wide receiver should reassign to that slot, essentially to where that vacated area is. And Justin Fields hit that for just massive gains. He also hit some split field stuff over the middle of the field on the deep post and stuff like that you really like to see. So to me, it is a projection. And to me, it's you want to base it off that athleticism, but he never really used that at Ohio State. So it is kind of a hard projection to translate. I just like that conversation is if you put him into an opportunity where you force him to use that skill set and unlock that mindset to where he actually can use his legs, excuse me, as a weapon that they actually are. Think Lamar Jackson with a more accuracy passing the football. That is what Justin Fields could potentially be at the next level.
So we have a super chat here, Call of Duty, $4.99 donation. Thank you.
Thanks, buddy.
For that. We appreciate that. Thoughts on Cameron Magron? We're not going to rehash it because we are running a little bit short on time. We talked about him earlier on the show, so feel free to go back and watch it. Basically, to summarize it up, I like him. I like him more width ways, sideline to sideline, than depth and coverage. And he's also has an ACL injury. Says, what do you think about Kylan Hill and CJ Virdell? Shout out to Best Pod on MHHA. We appreciate
Thanks,
that.
man. I appreciate that.
We try to be the best, even though I don't always think we are. Well, I don't think I am anyways.
Oh, I know I'm not.
CJ Virdell, he actually returned to school. He's going to be at Oregon next year. And then Kylan Hill, I really like him. I like what he can bring. I think that if you're looking for a running back day 3 and he manages to slip round 4 even with pick 113, I think is what it is for Denver, I'd take him. I don't know what it is. I'd take him.
I would take him as well. I think that he has the good enough vision to work within the inside zone looks that Pat Shurmur likes to use. There's some bounce to him as well. He likes to bounce outside, runs with some good physicality, but he also adds in that added dynamic of being a high-quality pass catcher. It's not the greatest thing. It's not his greatest skill set. Obviously, I think running between the tackles is his best skill set, but also he's a pretty decent pass protector as well. I like Kylan Hill. He's one of my guys. I need to go back and watch some more of him, but he is a guy that I really do like, and I want the Broncos to take, especially if they're not going to get like a Javonte Williams in round 2, who that's my dude. I love me some Javonte Williams, man. I tell you what, I got a couple of other super chats here. John, do you want to grab Muhammad? Yeah. Muhammad coming in here with a $5 super sticker. He is the king of the super stickers here on Mile High Huddle. How's it going? What's up, dude? How we doing? Thanks for joining the show as always.
A lot better before I got something in my eye.
I have got a tickle in my throat and my phone is just being ridiculous. I'm going to have to remember to leave that dang thing upstairs. Mundungus jumping in here with a $5 super. Let's fire through some more of these questions in a rapid fire way and try to get out of here tonight. I know we've got some stuff going on for you, Eric. Mundungus jumping in here with a $5 super. Obviously not a draft question and not sure you covered it earlier, but thoughts on Sheldon Richardson after his release? Good depth player. Sure, head case. I don't like Sheldon Richardson. I think he wants a little bit too much more money than what he wants. He's not necessarily that great. I think that there's a good depth rotation. I would rather go and take a look at Maurice Hurst, who the Raiders put on waivers earlier today, and then he passed waivers. That's a guy that I would take a look at more than Sheldon Richardson.
Hey, Mundungus, good to see you in here. We don't see you often on Friday nights, but when we are, we're always happy to see you. So thank you for joining us. What he said, it's a big no for me on Sheldon Richardson. A couple years ago, I was willing to take the thing on it, but he's just consistently pissing off coaching staffs to where it's not even worth it. And then, Maurice Hurst, he had a really good interior pressure rate for the amount of snaps he had. Like, I would definitely take a shot on him. Darian comes in. Is there a player in this year's class that came out last year would go significantly higher? Yes. Shaun Wade. Wade, if he came out last year, is probably a first-round pick. This year, I'm not sure he goes top 100. Like, there's a lot of concerns about where his position actually is. I feel it's safety. I've talked to people who feel it's nickel corner. I've talked to people who believe that he can still play on the boundary. So there's a big wide range of thoughts on him, and it wouldn't shock me to see him, but I'm not so sure we do if he goes going top 100.
I typically don't do this because Bawan is always behind the scenes and he does a great job behind the glass, but he's got a really good question here that I want to throw up here. What position do you double dip in this NFL draft? I have a feeling that it's going to be on the defensive side of the football. And if it were me, I'm double dipping a cornerback, excuse me. A boundary. I want a boundary cornerback that can take over potentially for Kyle Fuller when he's gone. And I also want another slot guy. I think that because of Bryce Callahan, I do like Aseng Bassi coming up, and I think that he can develop and turn into a really high quality player, but I think you can get a boundary guy. And to tie this into another question I saw earlier, and I don't want to try to dig this up, Caleb Barley, the Virginia Tech kid, with all the injury concerns, he could potentially fall out of the first round and maybe to 40. If you can get Caleb Barley at 40, that would be all right with me. But Robert Rochelle, I love Robert Rochelle out of Central Arkansas. There's some length fluidity. I think that he can develop into be the athleticism isn't quite there. And I'm not too fond of him as a tackler, but he can get the job done. I think that that's a developmental guy that the Broncos can use in the nickel and on the boundary. He can be a little bit versatile for you. If you can get Robert Rochelle on day 3 and go get an Eric Stokes or a Caleb Barley, or I know one of Eric's guys here, Trickel Williams, I would welcome all of that. Eric, what do you think?
I think that there's one that's just obvious, and I haven't seen anybody mention it. There's 2 guys at the safety position. Double dip at safety.
Yep.
You need your depth, and you're definitely looking at one of them being a starter and one of them being your number 3 safety next year. Denver uses 3 safeties on the field so frequently, you have to double dip there. Especially with this class. You got to double dip. Plenty of guys there. Demar Hamlin, Caden Stearns. I would take them both. Like, I would be happy with them both, even taking them in day 3 even. Yeah, you got to double dip at safety. I understand linebacker. With Justin Cernata, it makes me hesitant to double dip there, especially with Josie Jewell and Alexander Johnson. Mm-hmm. And next year's linebacker class is projected to be not as good as this year, but still solid. So I'm fine waiting on that. There's no other position that really needs it. Corner is one that you can draft the year it's a need and be fine. But safety, like, especially even Vic Fangio's defense, like, now's the time to double dip. And go ahead and flash that question again. Are the Broncos really going to trade Hamilton? Probably. Really don't think that he's going to be on the Broncos this year. I said that a couple months ago in January that I don't expect him to be on the roster past training camp at the latest.
Yep.
And he just got his contract just doesn't match up for his role. They really like Tyree Cleveland. They want to get him out on the field more. Albert Okwuegbunam, they might use him at safety or at wide receiver, in the slot. I just don't see a place for Deshaun Hamilton in this squad, so try to trade him for something. Not sure what they'll get for him. He's a decent blocker, and he can be a solid slot receiver. Hands are a little bit questioned. Maybe a 6th or 7th round pick. He could be used as a potential piece for a part of a move up or at some point in it, like Denver sending their 6th round pick in Hamilton for a 5th round pick, something like that. But I'm not super big on what they'll be able to get for him. And Madungus came in with another one. With all of Parsons' issues, put out in a tweet earlier today, can we be done with Parsons at 9 talk now? Jameen Davis, anyone? I'm with you. Like, I've been off of Micah Parsons there for his play alone for a while now. Like, I'm all aboard. Jameen Davis, Baron Browning, even Jabril Cox later. Like, I'm all aboard on them. Like, thank you, Madungus, again for jumping in.
Yeah.
With the super chat.
I'm with you on that one, Eric. I was never really sold on Micah Parsons in the first place. I think that, again, he's more of a hybrid guy. I kind of agree with the sentiment that he might be best suited as a 4-3 weak side linebacker, or 4-3 will, if you will, which would be, and honestly, if Jack Del Rio was using him, that would probably be his best role. That 4-3 Sam linebacker, where he's actually used as the 4-3 over edge defender, that Von Miller role that he had when
Nate Irving.
Yep, exactly. There you go. That 4-3 over defender as the Sam linebacker, where he's rushing the passer more than actually dropping back into coverage and filling in the run game. I think that's probably his best role. Now, as far as what you said to Baron Browning, love that guy. I love me some Baron Browning. I also, again, I like Cameron Magron as well. And there's another one, Anthony Haines, Texas A&M, right?
Yeah.
Yes, that's my dude. I like him too. There's this linebacker class is another good one. And to go back to the safety class, I want to ask you this quick question before we wrap it up here. If you had to, because you're going to double down, you're going to take 2 safeties this year. What are the 2 safeties that you're going to combine as a long-term future plan? If you wanted to say we need a complementary skill set between the 2 of them, who are your 2 favorite guys and why? This is fun.
Oh, I just closed my board too to look at it. Javon Holland and Demar Hamlin.
Okay. I'll
take one in the 2nd round at 40, and I'd be looking at Demar Hamlin in the 4th or 5th round. Even though he's in my top 10, I believe he's in my top 3 or my top 100. I think he's going to fall because I definitely realize that I'm a lot higher on him than most people are.
Right.
But yeah, I'd be pairing those 2. Just the versatility you get with them in Vic Fangio's defense. Oh boy. I wanted to come back to this. The amount of mocks with Parsons at 9 kills me. It's such a lazy pick.
It is.
This reminds me of the safety out of LSU.
Delpit, Grant Delpit.
Yeah, Grant Delpit. This reminds me of Grant Delpit mocks from the Draft Network. I have absolutely nothing but respect for them, but they consistently mocked Grant Delpit to Denver for months. Every single mock draft was it, and they're kind of doing the same thing a little bit. A bunch of other places were doing the same thing too. It's like, just no. It's easy to look and see that Denver does need linebacker help, just as it was easy to look and see that they needed safety help. So it's easy to just pencil them in there. And one thing that I see with a lot of mock draft people when they're doing like 1st round mocks and stuff like that is they don't look at style fits.
Right.
Now, style fits is very different from scheme fits.
Mm-hmm.
Just because a team runs a 4-3 and another team runs a 4-3 doesn't mean they're looking for the same thing at defensive end. One coach might be a little bit more okay with less explosive, a little bit shorter guys. The other guy wants longer and more explosive. And one team that actually comes to mind about this is the Kansas City Chiefs and the Indianapolis Colts. What they're looking for with their defensive ends are drastically different. And they both run 4-3 bases, but they're not looking for the same thing. And I think a lot of people don't often consider that when they're building these 1st round mock drafts. You got to consider the style about it. You got to consider what the coach is like. Like if you're mock drafting, this is just a guy off the top of my head, a guy like Tavante Beckett, who is a 5'10", 210-pound linebacker from Marshall, and he missed 40 tackles the last 2 years. If you're mocking him to Denver, then you're not paying attention to the style fit that is there with Vic Fangio or isn't there with Vic Fangio. Right. Style is definitely a big factor here.
No, absolutely. And to kind of piggyback off of that, I mean, look at what Indianapolis has run in the past. I mean, you had long speed to power kind of guys, shifty guys. So just go back to the Dwight Freeney, Robert Mathis era, and they still kind of use that with Justin Houston up there now. I forget their other edge defender. Oh, well, but when they had Justin Houston, that long speed to power kind of conversion and whatnot, and the Chiefs, they're kind of like, wait, no, I have it backwards. The Chiefs are more speed to power and twitch and athleticism, whereas the Colts like to have guys where they stack the edge, and they're not really the true pass rushers. And the Colts will never have a really true pass rush sense because of that, because they don't have the speed rushers. They're more bull rush, power rush, stuff like that. The speed rushers come from the Kansas City 4-3. So it's a different dynamic, a different kind of a different way of looking and valuing the players that you have for the positions that you want. So I'm not going to have a guy that's short, squatty, dumpy, that can't really move and bend around the corner playing in Kansas City, whereas I'm also not going to have that long, lengthy kind of a guy, that freak athlete that can bend and dip around the corner coming in Indianapolis. So it's the weird kind of dichotomy there. Yeah, they both run 4-3, but they are looking for two completely different things. And Eric, I appreciate you for bringing that up, because I don't think necessarily a lot of people think about that.
And that actually brings me – there's two more comments I want to grab that are related to this topic of Parsons and style fits before we get out of here. Jay comes in, says, I don't know about Parsons' mental side, but man, what an athlete. Now, watching his tape, there is a lot of mental questions on the field.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Not talking about off the field. There's a lot of mental things up for it. And Vic Fangio's defense, you need the mental side of it on the field. It's my only concern with Baron Browning on this. Sometimes he can be late with his reads, and that can be a very damaging issue in Vic Fangio's defense. So think of Vic Fangio's defense like a net, and you want to get them caught in the net. One person makes a big mistake, and there is a huge hole in that defense. It's a lot different from most other defenses because obviously you're one-upping on everybody. I mean, one guy. And in Vic Fangio's zone, it's a lot more mental of it, being in the right place at the right time, being super aware. And I'm not sure Parsons can do that.
But
and
it's
Robert Kessler comes in and says,
sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you. It's not only that, though. It's the understanding of your assignment and staying assignment true as well. Like, it's understanding where you're supposed to be, being able to keep that hole in the net plugged up. And I'm sorry for interrupting you, but that's the thing. You have to stay true to your assignment. And Micah Parsons likes to freelance just a little bit and not do what he's actually supposed to do within that Penn State defense.
Yeah, definitely. And then Robert comes in, can the coach compensate for a lack of scheme or style fit? To a degree. Now, if the scheme fit, if that's an issue because the player just can't keep up with what's being asked for, if they need to be a super athlete and they're just not, then it's a lot harder to compensate for. Typically, what you would see done is if it's a corner, that's the issue. You'll typically see a safety kind of ease over onto their side, especially if they're getting owned early on. There's things they can do, but overall, that's a big reason why scheme fit is a big deal for a lot of coaches, and why style fit is such a big deal as well, because there's only a certain degree you can overcome it. And then Mundungus came in with the final super chat donation, $4.99. Thank you to Mundungus. As I said, great that you're here. And he's great to be here, guys. Usually have multiple things all needing to be done on Friday, so it's hard to make it live. Just know that I always listen. Hey, man, we appreciate it. We appreciate when you are able to make it. And so thank you for joining us if you have the time. I understand being busy, man.
Yeah, totally get it, man. It's hard enough. Got 3 kids that I've got to take care of. Samantha's schedule changed. It's and then got to do this on Fridays, and it is hard to balance real life and to be able to come and do something like this. And we just appreciate you for joining, and we appreciate everybody for joining us on the Dove Valley Deep Divers podcast. John, I'm going to take the controls here and wind this down. Again, guys, thank you again for joining the Dove Valley Deep Divers podcast. You guys can find me at Sanderson, MHH, and for Eric at Erick Trickel, and for John, Buana Beast at John K MHH for running things behind the scenes. We appreciate you, big buddy. While you're at it, guys, follow at Mile High Huddle. That is the mother account. It's the easiest way to keep up with what's going on with everybody at Mile High Huddle, including your favorite personalities like myself, like Eric, like Nick and Carl, Chad and Zach. Buana just dropped an article the other day. Make sure you go and check that out about Rashawn Slater. Love that. But anyways, Mile High Huddle, breaking news and analysis on your Denver Broncos. Anything you want to know, that's the place to find it. Facebook followers, while we get into this, go to facebook.com/milehighhuddle, click the blue become a supporter button, $5 a month, and you get premium access to Kelberman's Corner and Erick's new show that's been up for a little while, The Trickel Zone. Erick, what do you got on The Trickel Zone this week?
So this week, it's the second to final episode before the draft. Of course, we're going to continue this on after the draft, but talking about my top 10s or top 5s in the case of tight ends. So make sure you guys are clicking and become a supporter. I mean, it's a lot of information. If you guys want to hear me and dive into these prospects even more than I do here, just taking a couple minutes to just talk about these guys, their pros, their cons, weaknesses, how they fit everything. That's the place to be, is the Trickel Zone. Saturdays at noon. Got to become a Facebook supporter for it. There's little clips that go up on YouTube, but it's not the whole show. You're missing out. You only get to see one guy out of the 10 or 15 I talk about. Tomorrow it's going to be safeties, my top 10 safeties, and my top 5 tight ends, which is, I mean, I know that tight ends aren't going to be super exciting because Denver doesn't really need a tight end, but hey, it's still worth tuning in. It's still a lot of information. And when they get drafted, you can sit there and if you're throwing a little draft party, you can drop some knowledge and be like, hey, look, this is the guy, and sit there and have really good insight and great insight, or however you feel about my opinions on these players, and just be able to use that and pass it along and form your own opinions and all that stuff like that. So again, make sure you tune in. I'm every Saturday at noon Mountain.
And so Erick is every Saturday at noon. Kelberman's Corner, those hot takes that hold water, that's Sunday as noon. But guys, the only way you're going to get that, facebook.com/milehighhuddle, click the blue become a supporter button and help support us out there. If you guys are also financially able to do so, huddleuppod.com. That's the merch tent, guys. I'm a concert guy, not just get your swag on like Chad. Sorry, Chad. Love you, buddy. Get yourself a hat. Get yourself that Dove Valley Deep Divers t-shirt that Erick's wearing. There's a face mask. There's a hoodie, a coffee cup. There's another new coffee cup that just dropped the other day, the State of Being coffee cup. There's an 11 and 16 ounce version of that, so go check that out. Onesie for your baby, something for the guys, something for the gals, anything to suit your fancy. You can find it all. HuddleUpPod.com. Help support the brand in any way possible. That's a great way to do so. But the 3 easiest things you guys can do to help support us, wherever you guys are watching this or listening to this as a podcast after the fact, subscribe to Mile High Huddle. Like every video you guys see, like every single one of them. And if you love it, share it. Get it out in front of as many Broncos fans. Spread the word. This is the easiest way, the most organic way to help our show grow. And without you guys, we couldn't do what we do best, which is cover your Denver Broncos. Now, guys, to wrap this up, before we get out of here, Erick, is there any last words?
Yes. Make sure you guys are here next Friday night.
Yes.
It's our final show before the draft. It's going to be a freaking banger. Make sure you're here for it.
So I don't know if everybody kind of understands exactly how Erick feels about the NFL draft.
It's better than Christmas.
Day 3 of the NFL draft is Erick's Christmas because he puts in the work that nobody else that I know does. I mean, when we say that his big board is 400 players long, it's 400 players long. I've seen it. It is massive, massive amounts of information. So good. And this is where Erick shines because we're going to do this live draft party and Erick's going to be able to show all of the knowledge that he has produced and everything that he's procured and really break down every single one of these picks. And next week, we're breaking down 10 day 3 players a piece for you guys. This is what Dove Valley Deep Divers does best. And it's all because of Erick that we can be able to do something like this for you guys. So come and check it out.
So, yeah, talking about that, when Danny Trevathan was drafted by Denver, it was just when I first got a platform. I don't remember anybody ever talking about him. I watched him. I liked the pick. I loved the pick. He ended up being great. He ended up being one of my favorite Broncos in recent years. But just to give you guys a little bit of a tease, here's my big board. I've watched at least 3 full games of all these players. And yeah, they all have grades, and that's not even everybody. There's like 24, 25 more players that I just finished grading yesterday from this last week that have yet to be added. Like that's it, man. This is my bread and butter. This is what I thrive for. This is where I thrive. Like, I absolutely love it. So yeah, make sure you guys are here next week talking about these later guys. And then join us when we're live for the live draft show. Join us for our mock draft roundtable that's going to be coming up here soon.
Yep,
I believe we're looking at the Sunday before the draft.
Yep, I was going to say this should be Sunday the 24th or whatever that day is, I think.
So, yeah, make sure you guys are there, man. You guys definitely don't want to miss next Friday. It's going to be a stinking banger.
Yeah, we're gonna We're going to tee one up for Erick, and he's going to knock it out of the park. I tell you what, I'm trying to do the best that I can as the host of this show. But anyways, guys, thank you once again for joining the Dove Valley Deep Divers podcast. Y'all stay safe. Take care. Have a great rest of your weekend. And as always, before we get out of here, go Broncos. See you guys same time, same place next week.